Hey everyone, welcome back to Strange Minds 6. I'm your host, Ruby, and today we're going to be getting back into Strange Things Are Happening in Creepers, Mirror Mirror by Edgar J. Hyde. But before we begin, please grab your snack, grab your drink, or sit back and relax, and let's get to it. Chapter 3 Aunt Camilla. Sophie woke up the next morning to find Maya in her bed beside her. She touched her sister's cheek gently. "Maya?" she said softly. Maya groaned and tried to open her eyes. "Hi, little sis. What time is it?" Sophie squinted at her pink heart-shaped alarm clock and replied, 7:39. 20 minutes till 8, said Maya. "It feels like the middle of the night." "I'm sorry, Maya. I didn't mean to wake you. I was just confused. What are you doing in my bed?" "Don't you remember? You were having a nightmare. I was just going into my room last night and I heard you call out. You were really upset. I don't know how you don't remember." "I remember being scared before I went to sleep, but I don't remember you coming into my room." "Oh, well, you're okay now, so nothing to worry about." Maya smiled. "No point in dwelling on these things, is there? You were probably dreaming about whatever you think happened in the study." Sophie started to protest, but her older sister placed her index finger on her younger sister's lips. "Shh, just forget about it. Tell you what, let's surprise Mom and Dad. Let's get up and make them a nice breakfast. What do you say?" Sophie smiled. "Okay." She jumped out of bed and put on a pair of slippers. "What should we make? Pancakes?" When Mr. and Mrs. Molina came downstairs some time later, they were greeted by the very welcome sight of freshly made pancakes, sizzling bacon and eggs, and the delicious aroma of fresh coffee. "Well, this is a surprise," said Mrs. Molina as she kissed the top of her youngest daughter's head and joined Maya at the stove. "To what do we owe this pleasure?" "Nothing in particular, Mom. Sophie and I just decided it was time to give you a break from the kitchen, especially since it's Sunday, and since we both got up early, we decided breakfast was a good time to start." "Well, it's much appreciated, isn't it, dear?" Mrs. Molina turned to her husband. "Hmm? What's that?" he muttered, head already glued to the sports channel on the TV. "You're as bad as Danny. I said it's much appreciated. The girls making breakfast for us like this." Mrs. Molina turned the TV off and waited for her husband to reply. "Oh, yes, sorry girls. Just wanted to know the outcome of the big fight last night. Yes, it smells delicious. I'll have 2 of everything," he told his wife as he turned his beloved TV back on. "I take it Danny's still asleep then, Mom?" said Maya, between mouthfuls of toast. "No, she's not asleep. She's propped up in her bed, reading, if you can believe it." Maya smiled. Whatever would that girl do without books? Sophie avoided the study for the rest of that week. Not that she ever had any real reason to go in there, but she did not but she did like the room. The peaceful air, the smell of old leather, that somehow reminded her of her dad. She spent most of the time either in her own room or with one of her sisters in theirs. Today, she was in Danny's room, as Danny helped her dye her favorite pair of shoes. They were so dirty that Mom was going to throw them out, but the two girls did such a good job restoring them, Mom said that they could keep them. Sophie spent the rest of the afternoon playing with her little music box and making her parents smile as they watched her walk upstairs in her bright yellow shoes, adorned with daisy patterns on each strap. Aunt Camilla's coming over on Friday night, said Mrs. Molina to the girls that day. Great, said Maya. Is she staying over? She probably will. Dad and I are going out, and we may be back too late for her to drive home. There's plenty of room for her to stay here anyway, she finished. Aunt Camilla was Mom's sister, and the three girls loved when she came to stay. She was the type of aunt any child would love. She never yelled, always brought candy and treats, watched silly videos with them, and generally spoiled them rotten. Every time she came to visit their house, she arrived with a large duffel bag, which the girls knew contained presents for all of them. A magazine for Sophie, usually one with a free sample of perfume, a new bestseller Aunt Camilla knew Danny wouldn't have read yet, and last time for Maya, it was a brightly colored laces for her huge boots, and so the Auntie Camilla visit was always looked forward to with much excitement. Oh, Mom, breathed Sophie on the night they were going out for the evening. You look beautiful. Thank you, sweetie. Mrs. Molina smiled as she took one final look in the mirror. I'm really happy I got this dress on at all. I haven't worn it for such a long time. I wasn't sure I would get it to zip up all the way. Sophie handed her mom her purse from the bedside table and smiled in admiration. Her mom was swathed from head to toe in red silk, her dark hair pulled back in a bun. Mom and Dad were going to a fundraiser her father's office was throwing and had decided at the last minute to stay over at a hotel. You girls will be just fine with Aunt Camilla, and in case anyone suddenly gets measles or the Black Plague, she can call. We'll each have our cell phones with us. Danny had just entered her parents' bedroom. The Black Plague, Mom? Are we in a different era? That died out years ago. Mrs. Molina smiled. Stranger things have happened. Now, where did I put my earrings? She didn't have to ask. Sophie was holding them against her ears while she admired herself in the mirror. Mom, can't I? Don't start. The pierced ear pleading again. Sophie, I told you before, when you're older, you're only 7 years old. Now come and give me a kiss before I put my lipstick on, and let's not fight about silly old earrings before I go out for the night. Sorry, Mom. Sophie hugged and kissed her mother. They had just reached the top of the stairs when they heard the doorbell. That must be Camilla, remarked Mrs. Molina, late as usual. Maya and her father opened the door. "Hello!" Aunt Camilla shouted. She was beaming and carrying an even bigger bag than usual under her arm. "Let me in. It's freezing out here." Chapter 4. Girl in the Mirror. Aunt Camilla had carefully placed her slightly unzipped duffel bag just inside the kitchen door. "Aunt Camilla," said Danny, "I hate to tell you this, but I think your bag just moved." Aunt Camilla smiled. "Goodness gracious, you can't keep secrets for long in this house." She walked over to her bag and opened it up. She pulled out a small box from inside the bag. It was made of a thick cardboard and had holes on the top. A snuffling sound came from inside the box, followed by a frightened yelp. The girls crowded around as Aunt Camilla removed the lid. The most adorable, fluffy little puppy looked up at everyone with the biggest, brownest eyes they had ever seen. Chaos ensued. Everyone spoke at once, and the girls began clamoring to hold the puppy. "Aunt Camilla, she's beautiful. Is she a boy or a girl? Is she for us? Can we keep her? What's his name? How old is he? Can she sleep in my room?" Aunt Camilla didn't know which child asked which question. She tried to answer as best as she could. "She's for the family. She's sort of a housewarming present. She's 8 weeks old. She doesn't have a name yet, and it's up to your mother where she sleeps." Mrs. Molina looked aghast at her sister. She had bought a dog as a housewarming present. She was fuming. 3 children, a house not even half decorated, and now a puppy. She tried to smile, managing a sort of lopsided grimace. "Well, that is a surprise, Camilla. But since it was such a surprise, we obviously don't have a bed for her to sleep in yet, so you'll have to think of somewhere to put her tonight, until we can buy one tomorrow. In bed with you, perhaps?" she finished sarcastically. "Sure, she can sleep with me for tonight, except she's not quite house-trained yet, so that might be a problem." She turned to look at the kids, who were completely entranced by the new addition to the family, particularly Sophie. Maya was pleased too. She felt like it was just the kind of thing Sophie needed to take her mind off of her experience in the study. The puppy lay contentedly in Sophie's arms, paws stuck straight out in the air while Danny scratched her tummy. "Oh, she's such a sweetie, Aunt Camilla. Thank you," gushed Sophie as she cuddled the little dog so tightly Aunt Camilla was fearful that the puppy's food she had eaten earlier that day would soon be projected all over her sister's floor. "Sweetie, what a perfect name," said Aunt Camilla. "Nice job, Sophie. You've just christened your new puppy. Sweetie couldn't have thought of anything better myself." "Sweetie?" thought Danny and Maya at the same time. Imagine taking her for a walk when she was fully grown. She was a golden retriever after all, and they did grow pretty large. And they were going to call her Sweetie? Maya gave Danny a look that said, "Say nothing," as both girls knew the naming of the puppy had delighted Sophie, and neither of them wanted to upset her. Mrs. Molina sighed resignedly. There was nothing she could do about it now. Best to make the most of it and leave the family to it for tonight. She took her coat from the closet as Mr. Molina put the overnight bags in the trunk of the car. She then kissed everyone firmly on the cheek, issued more last-minute instructions, and finally left. Well, girls, what are we going to do for tonight? Asked Aunt Camilla. Maya and I were playing Scrabble earlier, but if you'd like to join in, we can scrap the game and start over. We've been playing on Dad's desk in the study. It's easy in there trying to play on the floor. It's easy in there than trying to play on the floor, said Danny. Oh, no, don't start a new game just for me, dear. I think I'll stay here with Sophie and Sweetie for now. But why don't you and Maya go on and finish your game? I'll know where to find you if I need you. Aunt Camilla popped a chocolate into her mouth. Oh, and help yourselves to some chocolate. She said, indicating to the supply she had brought with her and placed on the kitchen counter. Both girls took some of the chocolate, gave Sweetie a final pat, and left the room to go and continue their game. It's not very warm in here, is it? Complained Danny as she shivered in her chair. It's just because there's an empty fireplace and it makes you feel like there should be a lit fire there, replied Maya. Come on, urged Danny. If you'd hurry up and play, I wouldn't be thinking about the cold. Absent-mindedly, she played with a little music box, lifting it up and putting it back down again, roughing the edges of the doll's little skirt. Wait a second. Did you bring this in with you, Maya? No. Why would I bring it in with me? Replied Maya. Sophie must have left it in here. But Sophie hasn't been in here in forever. You know, ever since... Oh, well, whatever. Will you hurry up, please? Maya placed 3 letters on the board in front of her. Zoo? Is that it? It took you all this time to make zoo, said Danny. Maya smiled. Yes, but look how many points I got. Danny gasped, then picked up the pieces to double-check the scoring. Maya was right. She had just gotten 36 points. Danny sighed before looking at her own letters to see how she could make up the deficit. She was still winning, but she wanted to win by a lot if possible. Maya picked up the music box and she began examining the little ballerina. Beats me why she's so attached to this thing, she mumbled, winding it up as she spoke. I guess she was probably pretty once upon a time, but that must have been very long ago. She placed the little doll down on the leather desk and waited patiently for Danny to play. The little ballerina twirled to the music, and as she did, the girls became aware of a mist swirling from the mirror. Danny dropped the letters she had in her hand and turned to stare. A young girl looked at both of them from inside the mirror. Maya caught her breath and reached out to grasp Danny's hand. As the girls stared, they became aware of the other people in the mirror. They could see a woman in her kitchen with 2 children beside her. There seemed to be an air of panic, the woman quickly gathering items together. She lifted a flashlight and some blankets and took some food from the fridge. "Come on, Emily," she said as she took her daughter's hand. "We have to hurry." The little boy also held his mother's hand. As all three of them left the house, Maya and Sophie almost had to cover their ears. The sound of the air raid siren emanating from the mirror becoming deafening as it went on and on. The small party had now reached the backyard, quickly making their way toward the air raid shelter, when the little girl stopped in her tracks. "Isabel, Mom, I've forgotten Isabel. I'll have to go back for her." The woman stopped, pushing her hair from her eyes impatiently. "Darling, we cannot go back to the house now, and especially not for a doll. Hurry now, let's go." She regained hold of her child's hand and pulled her toward the shelter. The child dug her heels in fast. "I can't, Mom. I can't leave her all alone. She'll be scared. Please, can we go back?" Her brother scoffed. "Scared? It's a doll. She can't feel anything. Now hurry, do what Mom says, and get inside the shelter." Emily started crying, her brother's harsh words unleashing her tears. She tried to bite down on her lip and drew the back of her hand across her wet cheeks. The woman's heart melted. She had never been able to bear to see either of her children cry. "Okay." She knelt beside the girl. "Okay. Emily, dry your eyes. You and your brother go into the shelter. I'll join you as soon as I can. As soon as I have Isabel. Go on, hurry. You two." She gave her children a gentle push. "Don't look so worried, Tim. I'll be back before you've even closed the door. Go on." The noise of the air raid siren was deafening as the mother made her way back to the house. Maya found that she was holding her breath, willing the woman to hurry and get back to the safety of the shelter. The girls watched her enter the house, and what seemed like an eternity later descend the back stairs, clutching the doll in her hand. She was halfway across the yard when the bomb dropped. Not directly on the house. It actually fell some distance, but it was too close enough to cause severe damage to the roof, blowing out some windows and tearing the door off. The woman fell, striking her head against the fence, sounding the yard. Her scream could hardly be heard. There was so much noise going on all around. The door, which had been torn from the hinges, fell right on top of her. The glass pane shattering as it landed on the woman. Aware that something was wrong but not knowing what, the children ran from the shelter, followed by some adults trying to hang on to the children and restrain them until the planes had gone. Emily saw her mother first, eyes wide, her body contorted beneath her from how she had fallen. "Mother!" the child screamed, followed by her brother. Both ran toward the figure, screaming and crying, throwing themselves onto the ground and frantically to clear the debris from her. A neighbor who had followed the children outside tried to calm them down. She could tell just by looking at their mother that their mother wasn't going to make it, and clearing the debris would do no good at this stage. She lifted Emily into her arms, another neighbor taking hold of Tim, speaking calm words, leading them back to the shelter. "We can't leave her there," choked Tim. "We can't leave her there on her own. She'll be frightened." Danny and Maya watched the receding figures and looked again at the woman. Still clutched in her hand was the little doll. As the picture began to fade, the girl who had first seen in the mirror reappeared. She smiled at the sisters, and they noticed that she now had the little doll on her knee and was stroking the little doll's hair. Slowly, her face faded from the mirror, almost at exactly the same time as the little ballerina stopped turning to the tune by the music box. Maya exhaled deeply. "Are you all right?" She turned toward Danny. "I think so," her younger sister replied. "I can't quite believe what we just saw. I mean, if you hadn't been with me, I'd have thought I was seeing things. Poor Sophie. No wonder she ran screaming from the room when she experienced her sighting." Maya nodded in agreement. "I don't understand what's happening here at all." She stood up and walked toward the mirror. Her face pressed almost directly against it. She tried to see if it could possibly be rigged in some way to show the scenes that they had just witnessed. She pulled it slightly away from the wall, trying to see behind it. "There's nothing strange here at all," she told Danny. She turned to look at her sister and saw the younger girl had turned deathly pale. "Are you all right?" she asked. "Not really," Danny replied. "I feel kind of sick. I guess I'm in shock. Scrabble's the last thing I feel like doing. I can tell you that much. I think I'll go and make myself some hot chocolate. Come with me, Maya, please. Don't stay here on your own." "You don't have to ask me twice," replied Maya. "I'm right behind you." "What do we tell Aunt Camilla?" "I don't know, Maya. I mean, it does seem rather hard to believe, doesn't it? And apart from anything else, if we tell Sophie we've had a mirror experience like hers, we'll terrify her again, just when she seems to be forgetting it ever even happened." "Yeah, I think you're right," replied Maya. "We'll say nothing for now, but tomorrow I'm going back into the study to see if anything else happens. I wonder if there's something that triggers the sightings. A special word or something. Think, Danny, what were we doing that Sophie would have been doing?" "Playing the music box. Could that be it?" "Of course, you're right," Maya said. "That has to be it. And remember the day Mom and Dad bought the box for Sophie? Old Mr. Lawson said it had come from the same place as the mirror. Do you think somehow that mirror has retained all the awful memories of everything it has ever witnessed? And they're being shown back to us every time the music box plays." Danny looked dubious. "Seems rather far-fetched, I have to admit, Maya. I mean, who on earth would ever believe us? And who's the little girl? Some sort of keeper of the mirror? Or something? It just doesn't make any sense." She shivered involuntarily. "I really have to get out of here. Let's eat some of Aunt Camilla's chocolates." And that, my dear friend, ends chapter 4. Tune in next time for chapter 5, The Doll. And this has been Ruby, signing off.